with showcasing Brainerd at 7:16. We have Northern Pines Mental Health Center here for the showcasing. Mark Bublitz, did I get that right? If you want to come up, give your name and address to everybody, and you got until 7:30.
Could be tough. I talk longer that way. I say hello. My name's Mark Bublitz. I live at 407 North 4th Street, just up the street a little bit. Thank you for inviting me. Mary contacted me a bit ago. Difficulty is trying to keep things in 15 minutes. Northern Pines Mental Health Center is a community mental health center, founded in 1964 as a result of the Community Mental Health Act, which President Kennedy sponsored and had passed by Congress. What that does basically is it takes mental health services from institutions and puts them in the community. Prior to that, if you needed help with mental health, basically you got shipped away. Brainerd, we know what that means. It's a state hospital. Okay, so over the last 20 years, services have shifted from being based on a campus to being based in a community. That's where everybody lives. That's what Northern Pines does. We were originally founded on a block grant funding. That's the way community mental health was funded. And then over around the year 2000, Northern Pines went through a shift from block grant funding to fee-for-service funding, basically. So at this point, we're funded by a mix of fee-for-service, partnerships, contracts for service, and building insurance. That's the way that things work at this point. We're a private nonprofit. We have our own independent board of directors. When we were founded, it was the board of directors were county commissioners, and we've moved now where there are some county commissioners that are on the board, but they're part of a larger group that's representative of the communities that we serve. If you have questions, don't wait for me to stop talking, because I won't stop talking as long as I have the microphone. Feel free to interrupt at any point. We provide the stereotype, the typical kinds of services that you see. You go into the office, you talk to a therapist. You go to the office and you see a psychiatrist. It's the kind of things that you see in movies. Right? But that's a very, very small part of what we do. The majority of what we do is in the community. 62% of what we do we call community-based kinds of services. We do some employment services. What that means is that there are people who live with a mental illness, a serious mental illness, that limits their ability to hold a competitive job. And prior to a few years ago, those people didn't really have much chance of having independent employment other than maybe some shelter workshop kinds of things. But over the course of the last few years, a number of projects have happened throughout the state, and Northern Pines has employed a number of people, and they do everything from being certified peer recovery specialists, which help in the therapy recovery process, to working in transportation services. We've developed what we call moving service, which in essence helps an individual that needs to get from this apartment to that apartment, from this house to that house. Your kids move out of home, you help move. If you have a serious mental illness and you've been dealing with this for the last 20 years, you may not have any family to help you move anymore. So then what do you do when you move? That's what the housing service is there to do. We have a number of partnerships. In Crow Wing County, we're just about in every school district. We serve 6 counties: Aiken, Cass, Crow Wing, Morrison, Todd, and Wadena counties. So we're a regional presence. The largest service area ends up being the Brainerd area, ends up being the Crow Wing County area. But with that, then there are a number of partners. I think this is a very nice thing that's happening. We have staff that work in the schools. Being co-located in the schools, generally people don't think of them as Northern Pines staff. They think of them as school staff. Depending upon one's perspective, we have an identity crisis. We don't go around and tell everybody that we're here. We don't go around marketing ourselves. We don't go around telling everybody we're a community mental health center. So people don't know about Northern Pines. The reason we do that is that we're there to help people. We work with people. We don't draw a lot of attention to ourselves. But with that, then we end up being involved in many partnerships. We have a strong affiliation with the counties. A lot of that goes back to when we were founded with the Community Mental Health Act. But then also the counties have responsibility for providing services to people that have serious mental illnesses, and a large part of the people that we serve have what's called a serious mental illness, which is different than a mental illness because it's serious. Makes sense, doesn't it? Serious mental illness generally refers to the lifelong kinds of mental illnesses, the types of things that you don't have a situation that brings you to a depression or brings you to a situation where you're having some anxiety about being audited or whatever. Your loan's going to go through and you have some difficulty with that. You may have anxiety that you just deal with on a day-to-day basis, and it affects your ability just to be able to function. That would be more of a serious mental illness. Major depression would be the type of depression where you get up in the morning, if you can get out of bed, and you can't think of any reason why you should live. Can't think of any reason why anybody would want to talk to you. You can't think of anything that's good about yourself, and it goes on day in, day out, month in, month out. Those are the serious ones. We all have depression. Everybody has the days when you go, I don't want to go to work. Okay? But if that goes on for months and months and months, eventually you get to the point where you can't function, you lose your job. Northern Pines has a serious impact in the Brainerd, Crow Wing County area. In this area, we bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of $6.4 million. That includes salaries, wages, services, taking our vehicles someplace and getting them serviced, buying supplies, those kinds of things. We serve over 6,000 people annually. And, our total agency in the 6 counties ends up being over 6,000. In the Crow Wing area, it ends up being 2,500 people. The people that we serve make a serious impact. What we do is we work with the people that are living in the community. We have no residential services at all. So who are these people? They're you and me. Statistically, 1 in 4 adults is affected by mental illness. Take a quick count. 5 of us in this room are affected by mental illness. I know one of them. Anyway. But this is this type of a thing where...
elected in 3 years.
This is the kind of a thing where they're your neighbors. They're your relatives. They're you. These are the folks that every day get up and go to work. They have a house. They have neighbors. They have a life. But something's going on in their life that they need some assistance with. This isn't the kind of thing where everybody that we see ends up being disabled on disability. The majority of the people that we work with go to work. And we don't see it. You don't see people that have mental illness because inside we don't share that with everybody. But you know that if you look inside, you know your own insecurities, you know your own flaws, you know your own doubts. And there are times when that gets to the point where you need some help. Those are the majority of the people that we work with. If I have a couple minutes yet, I'll give you a few facts about mental illness. As I said, 1 in 4 people are affected by it. 1 in 4 adults are affected by it. 1 in 5 children are affected by it. 4 of the 10 leading causes of disability relate to mental illness. It's the 5th leading cause for hospitalization, and completed deaths by suicide ends up being the 2nd leading cause of deaths in the nation. 90% of the people who complete suicide have a diagnosable mental illness. Not all of them get help. The social costs of having mental illness or untreated mental illness in our nation, that means decreased work productivity, non-psychiatric health care. People tend to go to their primary care doctors. They just don't feel right, don't have any energy. They just don't feel like doing anything. They go to their primary care doc. They don't necessarily go to a mental health provider. The annual national cost is estimated to be over $317 billion. Lost earnings related to mental illness ends up being over $193 billion. But treatment for mental illness is very effective. In fact, treatment for depression has a greater cure rate than angioplasty. 70 to 90% of the people who seek mental health care report that it was successful. What does that mean? That means that I was struggling, that I didn't feel good, that I wasn't able to function the way I wanted to. I got in contact with someone in the mental health field, and they helped me to be able to regain perspective, to regain confidence, and to be able to continue with my life, to be able to continue to live independently. Northern Pines provides a variety of services. One of them that we provide are drug and alcohol treatment. And California did a study a few years ago, and they determined that every dollar spent for treatment in drug and alcohol saves $6 in future earning your future spendings that would relate to lost wages, costs for physical health care, costs for housing, costs for other kinds of things like that. As I said, we are community mental health server. We serve people birth to death. We're kind of spread throughout the whole community. Little of what we do ends up being sitting in an office. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take some.
Well, if I may, I'm here for the first time tonight as a city administrator, but I come from county government.
Okay.
And recently in the state media, there's been quite a bit of attention from county sheriffs regarding the inordinate number of prisoners who are diagnosed with a mental illness, and there aren't beds for them elsewhere. Now, that's a whole topic, and you don't have time for that tonight, but I would like to share a perspective on that. Basically, what can counties do and or citizens do to change that scenario?
Talk to your legislator. In short, that's what ends up happening. I came to Northern Pines in '87. All right, I was here as the movement was happening for the state moving from the 50s version of the state hospital to the second millennium community behavioral health hospitals. I support the community behavioral health hospitals. It's the right treatment. People don't need to be locked up. But what ended up happening was there ended up having difficulty being able to have adequate numbers of beds to be able to serve people on short notice, and it created a backlog. Now, the second thing that ends up happening, in my opinion, is that a person comes into the hospital within 3 to 10 days, 3 to 12 days, they end up being stabilized, and they don't need to have that inpatient care. Think of it as if you have a surgery. You know, when I had my appendix out in the 50s, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. When I had surgery here, you know, as an adult a couple of years ago, I was out of the hospital in 3 days. Well, same thing with mental health. You don't need to be in the hospital for extended periods of time, but when you come out, there is a need to be able to have support, to be able to have follow-up services, to be able to do things like med management, supported living. So there needs to be the resources for that as well. Now we get into reimbursement rates, and I won't go there now. But you're right. What's ended up happening is now law enforcement has become the catch-all, because if there's a situation where a person may not be safe to be independent in the community and there's no hospital beds, they end up getting stuck in jail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick, to bring it closer to home, back to earth, right here in Brainerd, you do have one facility, and I have no idea what they do, but it comes before the council often,
Okay.
and that's our place. What is that?
I
I know they've moved recently.
Our
When they
place-
were downtown, we had we had issues, not all of them good, but what I don't know what they do.
Our place is actually the program that I came up to work in when I moved up in '87, and it's called a community support program. When it originally opened, it was a drop-in center. It was down on Front Street, and that was a place for people to go. At that point, people that had been in the state hospital, when they would come out, there was a place for them to go. There would be mental health practitioners, clinicians. We had a nurse. So there were staff there that were familiar with treating mental health, to be able to be supportive and help people to be able to continue to live independently, and then to recognize if there were situations that were going on where they needed more help, needed to get in to see their doctor or whatever. So it's been that drop-in center kind of a thing. And then in addition to that, at this point, it does, in addition to the drop-in center, then there are some different things that they do in terms of some education classes, some support groups, and some things like that. It's technically now located on 9th and Maple, I believe it is. It's moved from Front Street over to 9th and Maple. The program that's now on Front Street is our ACT program, which, if you have 2 minutes, I would love to explain. ACT is a great program.
We have the 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Did I answer your question, Kelly?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
ACT is it's called Assertive Community Treatment Program, and it's a model that was developed in one of the Eastern colleges, university. I don't remember which one it is now. But the idea is you take the staffing pattern from an inpatient program where you have psychiatrists, you have nurses, you have social workers, you have licensed professionals, you have practitioners, you have employability person, you have a chemical dependency person, I'm probably missing something. And this group of people, generally somewhere between 8 and 12 people, then will work with a designated group of people. So rather than having me work with just, say, 20 clients, and I work with them alone, it would be we work with 120 clients, and then I have a primary staff, and then I have secondary staff, so that if I end up taking a day off, going on vacation, getting sick, or taking a different job, you don't have to change over to a new staff person you have no awareness with. Plus, you have the ability then to be able to provide the total care, the psychiatric care, the nursing care, the social work care, the therapy care. That's the concept. It's been very successful in working with people who have serious mental illnesses, primarily schizophrenia. People with schizophrenia tend to be more withdrawn, tend to be self-conscious, tend to not like to be in the public eye. So when you're building a relationship, it takes some time to gain trust and comfort. So the team has the availability of being able to do that. They have the time to be able to let the relationship develop. We have an adult ACT team and we have a youth ACT team.
Thank you.
Just one more, if I could.
Yeah, real quick.
Mr. Chair, first of all, thanks so much, Mark. This has really been good, but did I understand you correctly to say there is no residential treatment in Brainerd?
Correct. I think you're referring to what's going to happen with the crisis unit?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not residential treatment. Residential treatment would be where a person actually lives in treatment for a period of time, and they're in the process of getting treatment. Northern Pines, 2008, we were asked to develop a mobile crisis team. So the mobile crisis team is what I do now, and that is that right now you're to the point you don't think you can take it anymore. You call the crisis line, they get a hold of me, I come to you. All right. What we found with that is that there are situations where rather than going to the hospital, because you don't need hospital care, but being at home is also not adequate or not appropriate, that then there's a place where a person could go for a period of time, overnight, a couple of days. Generally, crisis units end up being about a week maximum. Depending upon what happens in that week, it can be extended a little bit, but it ends up being short-term where there are trained staff, practitioners, professionals, and access then to psychiatry, where the person can be there during that time to be able to get the situation stabilized and to ensure that the person ends up being safe while that ends up happening. So the crisis unit that we've been working on getting opening is what that intends to do. There are a couple of things in terms of getting, I don't know, I'm not involved in the development of that, but there are some inspections and things that are in the process of being done, but that's what will go there.
Mark, real quick, what is your website and your phone number for more questions and information?
You think I would know our website, wouldn't you? If you just Googled Northern Pines Mental Health Center, it's like www.npmh.org, I believe.
Okay.
What number? I'm going to give you my assistance number,
Okay.
218-454.
For the people that are listening out there,
Sure.
it's 218.
454
Yep.
7205.
Okay.
And I end up not being at my desk very often, so I never give my number because
Yeah.
I'm not there. But Josie knows where to find me, and I would be happy to come talk to anybody else if they have questions, or within our organization, finding somebody that might be able to answer them.
We'll have to have you back.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We allowed you an extra 5 minutes, and I think it was well worth it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Mark. With that, good evening. It's 7:35. We're in a council chamber. It's August 3rd. We'll start out with roll call.
Mayor Moline,
Here.
Borkenhagen,
Here.
Hilgard,
Here.
Kep,
Here.
Pritchett. Here. Bevins,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Keeler,
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we go to the next step, I want to welcome Jim Perrine, and I'm sure everybody at the council here. Thank you so much, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. It's a delight and an honor to be called to this very privileged position of serving the citizens of Brainerd. council, our very well-trained staff. We had a good meeting this morning, talking to department heads. So I'm just very privileged and honored to be here. I pledge to do my best, which will not meet with perfect review by all. I'm not a perfectionist, but I do really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for that.
Nice to have you here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item number 4, the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by Pritchett. I got it right on. All in favor?
Aye.
Same sign to oppose. Motion carries. Item number 5 would be the consent calendar. This is notice to the public. All matters listed are considered routine by the council and being acted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call, and we do have.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
You go ahead.
there's a typo
Yes.
in D, temporary 3.2% male beverages. I propose we change that to malt beverages.
They're going to be disappointed.
We have a motion by Mr. Chair, one more correction.
Yes.
That's up under A. The date is incorrect. It should read July 20th, 2015.
Oh, right. Oh, boy.
And with that,
Interesting.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the corrected consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Bevins, a second by Pritchett. This will be roll call.
Borgenhagen.
Yes.
Gilgart.
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Sheeler.
Yes. We'll move to item number 6, presentations. A is National Night Out. Do we have somebody here that's going to be doing the National Night Out presentation? State your name and address and your guest.
And my guess. Right.
Thank you.
Does it work just from here? Or do I need it closer? Okay, Krista Sukup, 606 Bluff Avenue, and Leah and Rebecca, my assistants today. Thank you for letting us come and invite you personally to National Night Out. National Night Out is obviously a nationwide event held the first Tuesday of every month. First Tuesday of August, excuse me. And it is tomorrow night in Gregory Park. So I am a part of North Side Neighborhood Association, and this will be our 14th year that we have done a National Night Out. We started out saying, let's have a block party. One of our committee members was from Minneapolis and had been a part of National Night Out, so we thought, let's incorporate it into that. So that's how we started bringing National Night Out to Brainerd. So this is the 14th year we've had it. We have about 200 to 300 people every year that show up. We provide free food, music, games. It's a free will offering. This year we have sponsors. Our sponsors are Essentia Health, Target, and a few other. We've got Kelly Bevins was a sponsor this year, as he has been for the last 14 years. Coca Moon. I think that's it. Anyhow, we want to personally invite all of you. It is for, we started it as a gathering of neighbors, and we believe that the partnerships that we built with law enforcement, so every year law enforcement is there. Right? Coming? Yes, we have the fire department. So the fire truck comes, and the ambulance, and the police. And we try to build those relationships and believe it's a big part of our crime prevention. And this year, with the murder that happened in our neighborhood, it just became all more clear that the relationships and the communication that we build up within our neighborhood are key to that prevention and those partnerships. And we do also have quite a few people. We welcome anybody to come to the party. We have a lot of people that come that used to live in North Side. We believe it's the best neighborhood. We love it. And we have people that come back to visit and see old friends, and anybody's welcome to come. And we also encourage, it doesn't have to be this big. National Night Outs really are meant to be smaller. Ours just happens to be bigger with sponsorships and things like that. But truly, the National Night Outs can be just a few blocks, and you meet in a garage with ice cream sandwiches. That's where a lot of the places are. So we always try to work with the police department in trying to give ideas and help support the other neighborhoods. I'd like to see every block in Brainerd covered with some kind of National Night Out gathering. So ours happens to be big. Usually they're not. So anyhow, we hope you guys can all come.
And I thank you for that, and I also noticed here, there'll be a downtown neighborhood group who will host this event from 5:30 to 7:30 at the 400 block of Laurel Street between the historic courthouse and post office. Then Marsh Run has, the townhouse will also host, there'll be 3 different events going on at tomorrow night, and they'll be hosting it from 5:30 to 8 in the cul-de-sac in the parking lot for National Night Out.
There's more this year, which is promising.
Yeah.
So I know Joey's been trying to work on getting other neighborhoods to try to put something together. So, and like we said, it can be very simple. It's just a matter of gathering and really just getting to know your neighbors is the key to many things.
Yeah.
So,
Any
and ours
questions?
is 5 to 7. I don't know if I gave the time, but 5 to 7 Gregory Park. We just had a group of about 30 people just now. We left, gathering picnic tables and getting our area ready, and
The weather should be nice.
we ordered turtle brownies for Mr. Mayor again.
Only for the mayor.
It's his favorite.
I heard he's doing the face painting now that Ron is. I'm
He's
still
got the
practicing.
roller out.
And the Crossing Arts Alliance is going to be there this year, too, to do some kid games. So.
I want to thank you and
Thank you.
thank the young ladies for also joining.
You don't have to lie to us.
There's
That's
no,
okay.
there's no seats left. Item number 7, council committee reports. We'll start out with Safety and Public Works Committee. Mr. Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be adding item 7, which is the RFP for the request for proposals for city improvement 1419. That's the water tower that you just received tonight. So I'll get there when that'll be item number 7. Item 1, sewer backup information. We discussed last meeting the need for notification of proper procedures if you have a sewer backup. And Mr. Engineer did find on our website, property owners experiencing a sewer backup may call the following, and it would be the engineering department at 828-2309, or Brainerd Public Utilities Central Station after hours, weekends, and holidays at 829-2193. That is available on our website. It is not easy to find. We'd like to make it more prominent and are working on it. Of course, everything that's on our website deserves upfront prominence, and you can't do that. And so we do the best we can, and we want to notify the public. Now we all know, because we've discussed that we didn't. And really, the impetus in correcting or directing people has to come from our contract, because for many people that will be the first call when their sewer doesn't work. And as long as our contractors are compliant and in helping people work through this, then hopefully we can avoid putting the wrong people in the wrong position. So that was purely informational. Item 2 is the public transit grant resolution. There is a copy in your packets. This is the authorization with the state of Minnesota to provide public transportation services in the year 2016. And the motion is to adopt the resolution in our packets, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by Hilda.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to note, if you haven't read the resolution, or if you're at home, this is where the city of Brainerd agrees to provide a local share of 15% of the total operating cost and 20% of the total capital cost, as we have in the past.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
I just had one question about the 100% of local share expenses that exceeds the funds available from the state. Is that just what we've already done anyway? Is
Yes.
that a new thing?
No, it's new language in the resolution, but it's not new, where we always have been obligated to cover 100% of the cost in excess of the state grant. We've never reached that.
Right, so do other cities just shut their public transit down when they run out of money? Is that what the fear is? Is that why we're adding it to the resolution?
No, they shouldn't have to, because the MnDOT grant applications are fund a certain number of operating hours and certain capital improvements. So there's really no reason that a service should be exceeding those hours of operation.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
For a little extra clarification, I'm on that transit committee. We always review the budget very carefully to be sure that it is within the amount of money that we will get from the state, and that our own local match will be, we acquire that through our fares. So there is no tax levy from the city involved in this whatsoever. And just for clarification on this, so.
Thanks, Mary. This will be roll call.
Borkenhagen?
Yes.
Hilgard?
Yes.
Coe?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Bevan?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Sheeler?
Yes. That motion carries. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3 are chip seal project notifications. If you're not aware, we had a number of chip seal projects starting last week. And chip seals where they put the hot tar in the rocks down, like on 8th Street, some downtown streets. And really some of our busiest streets in the city of Brainerd all came under the last week or two. Needless to say, whenever you do a project of that magnitude with that many people involved, we had a number of concerns that were addressed. Everything from, we notified property owners, because that's really who we can notify. And even we found from Alderwoman Hilgard that even the county didn't notify their own employees that they weren't going to be able to access county buildings on the day of the chip seal project. So even the county, which knows better, failed to notify their employees. That being said, our chip seal guy showed up a day late. Those, and it's all circumstances like this. A couple of the things that we're working on is posters and flyers, particularly in an area with a lot of rentals like downtown, to try and help notify people who are not property owners, and because their landowners, the building owners are not sharing with them information. But inevitably, there will be or can be mistakes, and so we'll work on it to do the best job we can. Good news is we're not going to have to do those again next year, and we'll apologize to anybody we might have inconvenienced. And we are aware of some of the problems. I can't guarantee that you'll, if you were wrong this time, that you'll get the notice next time. We're going to do our best. And on the positive side, they started doing some of the striping, which was that also a day late?
Yes.
Yeah, also a day late. And it's unfortunate. You're dealing with companies that you want to start at a certain time. You put it in the contract to the best of your ability, but usually it's a done time, correct, Mr. Engineer, as far as when you go and things inevitable or can go wrong. But it looks nice, and it looks like the chip seal took, or was a good job. And if things went wrong, please call the engineering department if you've got a specific complaint.
Could I ask
I
a
just wanted
question?
to say one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to clarify, the county may well have notified their employees, but they didn't notify their building tenant. Just because I
Thank you.
don't want them to feel like they didn't do their due diligence for their staff. They may well have, but
They may have.
but as a tenant, we didn't know.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I was going to say that, first of all, we were notified about a week or a week and a half prior, and I think the way the notice came, maybe some people didn't open it, was kind of folded together and sealed, and but we were notified, and I did feel that on Laurel Street, they did a good job, and they were quick and efficient and very nice, and so I did think that, but was this the same program that then did the trail, or the, because now there, they went, it was terribly hot, and the surfacing was very wet, And it was there that people could not get into their business. And I know I had complaints about that, and I did wonder why they chose to do it on such a terribly hot day. It was on a Friday.
Yes.
And it was just wet. And I know there were businesses that absolutely could not get in.
If I can, Mr.
Yes,
President.
please.
First, it's difficult to control what day of the week they're doing that when they mobilize. They've got small windows of time when they can complete the work. Certainly, the temperatures were within the range which we would allow them to do the work. The fog seal that we put on the trails generally takes about an hour to set up. Most of the problems that we had were with driveway crossings of the trail, particularly on West Laurel Street and a few other locations, and we were able to accommodate those property owners with just sprinkling some sand over the tack that was laid down, and that resolved the problem with vehicles getting in and out. I think the other place where we had a particular issue was with on 8th Street between Laurel and Front, where there is a concrete walk adjacent to the building, so there was access, but the boulevard's all blacktop, and I think it's entirely possible people wouldn't recognize that. We tried to block off the two ends, but we couldn't block the entire length of the road, so we could have had people tracking across that, which would certainly have been unfortunate. I'm not aware of any specific occurrence of that. I haven't had a complaint on that, but it could have been a potential anyway. To add a little bit too, on these types of projects, a lot of times we try to coordinate with a contractor. They're trying to guess how long it's going to take them in the communities that they're doing these services in before they get here. So a lot of times early in the week they might project being here on Thursday or Friday, but the work is very weather dependent. If we have high humidity or if it happens to rain where they happen to be located, then they get delayed a day. So it's difficult to really lock them into a specific date and time frame.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff, can you describe when this will firm up? I had some people downtown, and they were even told that this is going to be loose and tarish forever, and I said no. If you can describe that process of when it'll be.
The chip seal, we had streets open for traffic in roughly a half hour after they were chip sealed. Okay. And they're usually set up, within that half hour to 45 minutes. Following that, the following day, the contractor did sweep loose gravel the best they could, both with a power broom and pickup brooms. Downtown was a little bit more difficult because of parked vehicles. We didn't want to disrupt the parking on that Friday, so we had the contractor sweep the best they could, knowing that we're in there every Wednesday morning, so with our pickup brooms, we can pick up the balance of it. But the other streets, 8th Street, Laurel Street, Southwest 4th, where there is no parking, the contractor did a very effective job of sweeping and picking up the loose gravel. So we thought that worked out quite well.
Thank you so much. Any further? Mr. Bevins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's nothing else on that item. I wish we could make it perfect for everybody. And item 4 is going to be a very similar item, and that's the project turf establishment. We've had a couple of projects throughout the last year, and as you recall, we recently switched from bidding sod, which we had all kinds of complaints and problems with, especially with the life expectancy, to bidding to a seeding process. With that, we've had some complaints that, particularly around the Garfield School and the Safe Routes for School project, that the turf hasn't taken. The contractor reseeded. It started last fall, and they reseeded in June the entire project, and still we have some that just didn't take. I think our engineer said we've got between 6 to 8, where we're just going to have to go back on a property by property basis. And do the best we can to reestablish. That being said, a large portion of what we do is get the ball rolling. And so we really need help from property owners, just like you would maintain the boulevard and your own property, water it, please, weed it, fertilize it if you do, and take care of it. And you'll have a much better success rate. If you expect that now that the city's done a road project, that the city's going to maintain this reseeded area, it's not. We can't make it happen. We absolutely could, but the cost would be astronomical. If you don't know if you're part of the 6 to 8, I mean, we just had a complaint from a property owner at 1201 L Street, and I wanted to mention it because Mr. Sheila brought it to our attention. And you feel you've got a specific complaint, we would appreciate you talking to the engineering department and making sure you're on the list. So that is the end, unless Mr. Sheila, there's any.
And I want to thank you for that, and I have received quite a few complaints up in the area, but, and you hit it right on the nail when you said, the property owner should, participate and help out. They'll always use the phrase, the city. Well, they are the city, and people forget, you are the city, and, this is how it's done. So I appreciate that part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the sign definitions, hazardous and disrepair. We had a question from Mr. Osgarden as to whether we want to clarify or even go deeper regarding the discussion about signs that are in disrepair or in hazardous conditions. And specifically, do we want to add definitions to disrepair? And in that making it easier maybe to enforce, and a committee has determined that no, we'll leave it as is. Webster's has given a proper definition of disrepair, and we don't need to complicate things. Certainly hazardous is a totally different thing, and maintaining signs is a totally different. Those things are enforceable. Mr. Osgarden, anything you want to add? No. Okay. So there's no action or no recommended action from Safety and Public Works. Item 6 is the Chapter 800 code enforcements, and that is something we've discussed a number of times. I hope you all received an email from our former city administrator, and his suggestion is that we just follow the state and county and just eliminate signs in the right of way. Wouldn't that be simpler, more congruent with what everybody's doing? Mr. Sheeler gave us an example of a past business of his that was on state and county or state highways, and there was no question about it. They're picked up and gone. Alderman Borkenhagen brought that suggestion up tonight as being a very legitimate solution. Safety and Public Works would like to continue along the path of making this a more workable solution, particularly for
our residents.
Yeah, our residents. And look, there's a lot of legitimate opportunities that we feel we can work with. It's not New York City, it's Brainerd. And there's going to be a lot of things, issues, but if we stick to size, location, the parameters that our planner has given to us, we feel we can come back with a simplified ordinance next. And so I just want to, and we have no motion again this evening, but we did discuss scrapping the whole thing and just sticking with what we got and enforcing it. And if that's something you think you should go with, we're going in another direction. I wanted you to know that, so you're not surprised when we do come back. Expectations are we will come back with them in 2 weeks. And the last thing is, and it's again been placed in front of you this evening, it is a request for proposals, and the motion is to send out the request for proposals as presented with the strike-throughs. Now, there's some strike-throughs on there regarding dollars and cents on the grant we received. We don't want that part of the proposal, and some strike-through on times and dates for proposals due and acceptance of proposal, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Bevins, a second by Sue. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Mr.
This is
Bevins.
just a request for architectural and engineering firms interested in preparing a historic structure report and roof design for the historic Brainerd Water Tower. It's actually not that. They're not going to build it, tear it down, fix anything. They're just going to prepare an engineering and historic structure report for the water tower and the roof design, which was part of the historic original construction. For you new people, that water tower had a roof on it, and the one in Pipestone still does. And if ours is going to qualify, it has to qualify in the entirety, which will include a replacement. So, anyway, the motion is to, you know what it is.
Go ahead.
How are we going to pay for it? What are the source of funds?
There's a grant that the city of Brainerd has secured through the Minnesota Historical and Cultural Heritage. And the Minnesota Historical
And
Society.
is it less or more than the $10,000?
Well, we weren't going to indicate the amount of the
Right.
grant to prevent, someone's
Right.
estimate coming in at that amount. But
But
that,
thank you.
we're,
It would be within whatever the money we have. Is
No, it may not be. We may get requests for proposals in the $1 million range, but if we don't ask, we're not going to.
And the second question is, haven't we had a report on the condition of the water tower? I thought we've had 2 or 3 of them already.
Question to Jeff?
Well, whoever
Mr.
can
Bevins?
answer.
I would defer to the engineer.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
If I can, Mr. President, yes, we after we started experiencing the delamination last summer, we did have SEH and Braun do some investigation on the tower, and they came back with some recommendations. Those were primarily for the condition and to solve the delamination problem, and some ideas about what would be necessary to prevent water infiltration and future damage to the structure. The kind of as a this process that we're undertaking was initiated by Mark, and when he applied for the historic or the Historical Society grant, kind of initially we had applied for money to investigate the tower. That was denied. Through sources, we understood that our best chance at getting historical or legacy money through the Historical Society would be to follow a course where first we prepare a historic structure report, and then also it was thought that to be eligible for legacy funds through the Historical Society, we would more than likely have to reestablish the tower as it was originally constructed, that would be with the roof. So the recommendation we got from people well-versed in historic structures was that we should first focus on getting the grant to do the historic structure report and the roof design. Once we have that in hand, then at that point we may be eligible for additional legacy grants to actually do some of the structural work on the tower.
Eve, you had your hand up?
My questions were answered.
Well done, Jeff. And we got the mayor.
Just for, and I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but the one in Pipestone, and I don't know the exact figures of it, is quite a bit smaller
Yes.
in overall size. It's the same type of water tower, and they still have the roof, but it is quite a bit smaller as far as the physical dimensions of that tower. For those that didn't know that.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a motion, we have a second. Is this roll call, Mr. Bevins? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same sign, no opposed. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Bevins.
End of report.
Mr. Chair, may I refer 2 things to that committee on calls that I had that clearly are, I think, with their committee? Will you allow me to do
Yes.
that?
You want to do that under your report here?
Well, could I do it right now while
Yes.
they're still on
Okay.
there?
Yeah.
I had 2 calls. One asked that whoever's the appropriate group, and it would be Safety and Public Works, when there are notices of events, such as the recent JC's event or any event in the downtown area particularly, which is where most of them take place, there is a section in that for notification of neighbors, so that neighbors have the opportunity to know what's being proposed and also any concerns they might have that the group might then address. And I had a request that be very carefully noted, for next year's JC event, which I believe was very successful, and everyone appreciates what they do. But there were some people on the periphery of downtown who had businesses who, because the signage closed the streets, were unable to get to or have customers come to their businesses. And so I was asked about that. I said there is that on the form, and we'll be certain that in the future that's addressed. And spoke briefly with Gabe, and I know the JCs would be the first ones to try to be a good neighbor.
Yep.
So, but I promised to bring it up, so I am. And the second one was a call from someone who asked, after we got through discussing the issue that he had, which was, I felt, real, we agreed that there ought to be a review of our code enforcement policy. He received a letter that he has a small amount of paint chipping on a facade on his house. Soffit. And he felt, because he's done so much work on his property and it's in good shape, he thought, what a waste of city money to be running around with that. And I told him that sometimes I believe our code enforcement person goes down streets, looks at the various properties, sees something, writes it down, and it isn't as if he's picking on anybody. It's simply that he was there and he saw it at that time. But I did agree with the gentleman that I also had a call from a woman who was cited for a bag of grass clippings on her front step. And those do seem a little beyond what we expect. So the comments were from the gentleman, perhaps you could consider a three-pronged approach. For something that is not really egregious, the first would be a warning. We've noted this. What are your plans? Let us know. Perhaps then within a month review it. If nothing's happened or no response, then maybe the citation or something like that. And then after that, if nothing is done, then you would issue the citation. Now, there could be variations in how that's handled, but I think when our customers, and that's what people are asking us to look at reviewing it, no one disagreed that code enforcement's good. No one said we want our city to look like a junkyard, but they did feel that in some cases, not good judgment was used. So I don't know how you want to
Mary,
handle
I
that.
was just going to
but
ask Mr. Bevins just to put it on the next
could you
agenda. Would that be
consider
okay?
That's
We
all right.
absolutely take both of these.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on to B, Personal and Finance Committee Report. We thank you
Thank
for
you,
that.
Mr. Chair. The first
Item number one.
I move approval of the bills and payments to contractors.
Second.
We have a motion by Mary, a second by Pritchett. So any further discussion, otherwise it'll be roll call.
Borkenhagen?
Yes.
Hilgard?
Yes.
Coe?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Bevins?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Sheeler?
Yes. Item number two, Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 2 is the LMCIT premium renewal for 2015-16. Very good news. I move that we approve the insurance renewal from LMCIT for July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016.
Have a motion by Mary,
Second.
second by Mr. Bevins.
Now,
Any further discussion?
yes, under discussion, I would say that this will, there will be a savings of approximately $16,400 for this coming year, and that is very good news. A couple of questions that were raised that I will pass on to your information was a question that came forth from our chair was, are the claims paid on the replacement rate or the depreciated rate if a claim were submitted for that? And of course, they're paid to provide something new, not something depreciated. In further discussion, if you went with the depreciated rate, there would be a saving to the city. But you have to weigh that against being worth having that value when you probably need to replace it with something new. But that was a discussion. And the second point that I found interesting was that there are caps for any claim within the state caps as to what will be paid under state statute. Those caps do not apply if something went to federal court. They could be through the roof. Their caps are not applicable to that. But that's just information. So all in all, I felt we all think it was wonderful news, and I think we have to thank staff for the work they did to make sure this happened and continue on the right path.
Thank you, Mary. I have just one question, and that'd be on the, basically the fourth paragraph where it says the annual premium for this coverage is $37,559. It's a limit of $1 million for excess liability coverage. So, and I don't understand that $37,000 cost for that one extra million. If somebody could, go ahead, Gabe.
Mr. Chair, there are two different optional
Okay.
things. The excess liability quote is for a much larger liability coverage if it gets beyond and into federal court, the type of situation
And we
Mary was
don't take
talking about.
that.
This other bond option was just an additional $491 to go from a $1 million bond to $2 million.
Okay. Thank you so much for that clarification. With that, we have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. Item 3, I bring forward because committee members wanted to hear from Mark, who wanted to attend our meeting, but apparently had to come up here. And the request is for, may I say what it's for without a motion?
We'll allow it.
Request is for $1,500 to advertise the walk and wheel event on September 12th. And the money would come from the Strategic Initiatives Fund, which is $20,000 that was put into that fund. Would include display ad pricing on Sunday in color and black and white, some advertising. And the committee wanted to hear Mark's thoughts about it, and also if he could eke out any of it from within his own budget.
What would you like to hear?
Excuse
What
me?
would you like to hear?
Could you do with less? Could you eke any of it out of your own budget? I believe were the things, and I believe they wanted you to just talk a little more about the event, Mark.
Well, the answer to both would be no.
Pardon me?
The answer to both would be no. I can't eke any out of my budget, and the request is up to $1,500, not $1,500.
Thanks, Mark. Is there a motion coming out of committee on this?
I will ask Mr. Pritchett to make the motion, please.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Pritchett, second by Gabe.
I'm not
Any further
Mr.
discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to support it. I believe there is at least $400 left in the planning budget that will not be used, would require an amendment to the budget. There's $463 in miscellaneous and $465 left in dues and subscriptions. That's over almost $900. I believe out of that, 400 could easily be used with leaving what might be used until the end of the year. And I also worry about precedent setting that if we begin using this to advertise events, where does it end? And I do refer to the History Committee, who didn't ask for a penny and did terrific advertising.
Thanks, Mary. Any further discussion? Go ahead,
Just a
Sue.
question, have you considered any other advertising venue than the newspaper?
Yes.
Just because it's not the most
Yes.
typical.
Or Spencer.
There's many forms of media.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
We're going to use a sign out here at the corner.
What about
long as
Facebook
Yes.
or Twitter?
Radio, yes.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Go ahead, Mr. Bevan.
I'm going to vote against this as well. I just really think this should be a budgeted item for next year. I think Mrs. Pope is correct. Once we start using these funds for this, honest to goodness, I'd rather put it towards the water tower. I think we've created a little bit of this is going to sound like I'm against biking. And I like to bike. I've been to these walk and wheel events. I've been in I've been a supporter of them, but I think what we've done is we've created a situation where we're now asking to have people come look at us and how good we did. And we're going to spend public money to do that. And I just don't think that's right. I mean, we striped some roads on Willow Street, and so we're moving forward. And I voted against that, and I think if you ask a lot of the residents, putting the bike path on both sides would be arguably a mistake. It would have worked better if it was on one side. I don't know that taking public money to tout our own horn on this is a good idea. I think this should be something. I believe somebody mentioned social media, and I really think that's where the impetus should come for the movement. And I want to be a part of it. I want to support bike riding, and I want to support going to work. And I do a lot of bike riding in this, and I don't want my tax dollars. If I want my tax dollars to be used, I want them to be used towards bike trails. So not supporting this committee's event.
Thank you, Ms. Bevins.
You have
Go
a
ahead.
motion.
Okay, I have a motion. on the
One
floor.
procedural question, I guess, and one question for the council. Since this money has already been budgeted to initiate or to implement your strategic initiatives, and this is what this activity does, why do we need to bring this amount to the council in the first place? Two, what is the money supposed to be used for?
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr.
Dean,
Chair,
go ahead.
that was my first question in committee. I wasn't quite sure what is the strategic initiative fund, because the walkable, bikeable city idea is a part of our strategic plan. This is a city ad hoc committee. So is that what the strategic initiative fund was intended for? Last year when you guys passed the budget, I wasn't around. Or was it intended to do something else? I don't know. I haven't really gotten. I got a little bit of an answer from Connie that it was more towards fixing our website where you can't find out about sewer leaks and things like that.
It was actually for all the strategic initiatives. It didn't specify which one. It was just for all of them.
But is this a strategic initiative was my question.
Mr. Three had his hand up.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. President. At the committee meeting, I did raise the question about, is there a set of guidelines? I don't need to write a Bible, but what are the guidelines for expenditure of these monies? Of course, I speak from a position of great ignorance because I'm just coming into the building today, but that might help to have some guidelines as to what do we use this money for.
Go ahead.
And I would say it would be nice to have that guidelines. We don't now. I don't know if we're going to get one before September. This is obviously part of our strategic initiative. On the last walk and wheel event going around Brainerd, I found trails was introduced to trails that I did not know existed. It seems kind of silly to put money into trails and to promote a walkable, bikeable, and then hide it. I mean, even if you have the stuff posted and you look at it, I think this is a good idea. I don't think it would be. I'm not as particularly worried about it setting a precedent because it's so specifically stated in strategic initiative that any other group that came forward would have to have a pretty close tie to strategic initiative to be able to access that money. I'm hoping that he can do this under the 1,500. I mean, that was my issue, was maybe more with the funds, but that's kind of where I stand.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Go
One
ahead,
last
Dave.
thing, I think advertising in the Dispatch is a great thing.
Okay.
Oh, that's a suck up.
What I'm going to do is go with roll call.
He's looking for a good review.
Borkenhagen.
Yes.
Hilgart.
No.
Culp.
No.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevan.
No?
Johnson.
No.
Wheeler.
The motion already failed, but I'll say no then. So that motion fails. You want to go to the next item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the next item is item 4, and I would move that, I better turn the page, move that we approve a memorandum of understanding and authorization of signature of city officials for a new position in the BPU that will replace Mr. Herman, who has taken retirement. Now, the new position will not be supervisory. And the base wage of the new employee is projected to be $31.35 per hour, or a cost savings of $3.17 per hour, since Mr. Herman's was at $34.52. So I would move approval.
Second.
A motion by Cope, a second by Gabe. I just have one question on this. You know, and I do see that where it says, therefore, the base wage for the new employee will be the savings of $3.17. So I just flip back to the back page, but on January 1st, 2016, that pay will be $33.66. So really, there's only about an 86 cents lifetime savings, but it's only a $3.17 till January. Okay. Thank you.
Every little bit helps.
Yes.
With this, we're starting according to Step C of this union contract progression schedule. That schedule states that a new employee in this position would start off at 95% of the 2015 wage. So that's why there is the cost savings in 2015 of the $3.
Yeah, it's $3.17 just for this year, up until January 1st. But then after that, it's only an 86 cent savings from there on. Is all I was just pointing out. Okay, because sometimes people are thinking it's a $3.17 forever. Okay.
And I suppose, Mr. Chair, we should point out that the new person will not be doing electrical inspections. The state will be doing them for us from now on. So that's going to be a kind of a major change, and hope it works well.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 5, and the motion is that we proceed with the replacing for the Park Department of the Built Right roofing with OSB, insulate the ceiling, install felt and a drip cap to meet code, replace the soffit and fascia because of previous water damage to the roof, and replace 2 pieces of gutter over each entrance exit door. The proposed cost of that is between $9,500 and $10,000, and the motion would be to do this and use the money or pay for it from the $24,000 that is left over in the Park Department capital budget. There was actually $24,000 left over from the roof insulation, so this would bring that down to $14,000.
We have a motion.
I did, that's
Second.
the motion.
Second by Pritchard. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a question, and I support the motion, but we had discussed, at the bottom down here, it talks about capital improvement funds. Does this in any way impact, and our Parks Director mentions a concern about the remaining funds for the telephone system, which we've heard about from staff time and time again as being a number one priority, and a generator. Is this going to deter from those
No,
purchases?
Mr. Chairman, we had $100,000 in our general capital budget for this year. And it is from that budget that we are paying for the new telephone system and the generator. And that is adequate to pay for those. When the roof, the park roof insulation, et cetera, was done, the park had in its own capital budget $50,000. They had that separate from the city's capital budget. That expense was a little under $25,000. At that point, after we paid for that, we rolled the remainder into the city's capital budget. So we just have one capital budget. So taking some back out from that budget in no way impacts the $100,000 that we had and that we used for the telephone and the generator.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Bevins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chairman Cope.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have one question just on the wording of the motion, because the wording of the motion was to take the money out of the Parks Department Capital Improvement Fund. But Ms. Cope just stated that we already took all that 24 and put it in the General Capital Improvement Fund, so the motion might need to state that we're going to spend the money out of there.
You're probably right. And-
Would
and
you
I
like
think-
to amend?
Just
Okay.
put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Just do it.
Okay,
When we initially, just to clarify, the $50,000 that was in the Parks Department was not officially moved to the general fund, so it's still in the
It's
Parks
still there.
Department. So we can go ahead and pay for it out of the Parks Department.
Perfect.
Because we were waiting to see when the bids came in, and so those had not happened yet, so the official motion had not, or the official budget hadn't been amended.
my last question is, the remaining money in there, do you need a motion to have that move forward? So would this be a two-motion?
I think we could eventually, it's all part of the working funds, it's all part of the operating funds of the city, so whether or not it comes out of the Parks Department or it comes out of the general fund, to me, it's pretty similar.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Both same sign, that motion carries. Thank you, Mary. Go
The
ahead.
next one is item 5B, also Parks Department. A big problem in Gregory Parks with the fountain and the underground pipes and the bowl of the fountain. It seems like it may be, end up being a very large and costly project, and it's informational only. Staff will be reviewing it, looking at options, getting information, and bringing it back. And so we'd like to hope for the best, but we'll have to accept what the reality is. So that's informational, Mr. Chair.
Can I ask one question? But the direction is to continue having the fountain, or is the direction to
There's no
coming back to whatever is
No
whatever?
direction at this point. The direction is to look into the cost of repair and maintenance, get the information on the breadth of the issue, and then go from there,
Thank you.
the scope of the issue. Okay?
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Ready for the next one?
Yes.
Item 6 is, again, informational. Some discussion about the need for a proposed data practices policy to replace our current information. We'd like all of you to look at this. We would like the public to, is this accessed on our website? Can it be accessed on our website? Who knows? Jim, do you-
We can post it.
Okay.
Well, clearly indicating that it is a.
Is there a
draft
motion coming out of this committee?
No.
No.
Well,
Okay.
But I would like, this is a very important issue, and we would like to have people very well aware of it. I think one of the things that will impact the public would be the recommendation that there would be no free copies of anything for anyone. And that would mean that if a citizen comes up to the counter and says, could I have a copy of the animal control ordinance? And even though I think it's 2 pages, they would have to pay. The proposal is 25 cents a page. There's some concern about how would you handle something requested digital. There are some issues here, and a question that was posed to me was, by a constituent, was, all right, if you do this, does that mean you can lay off a staff member? Does this take so much time and so much money right now that if you don't do this, you won't need staff? I mean, come on, where's the payoff here? That's a fair question. The public has, I think, right now we provide 15 pages at no cost. That's what we provide. Anything over 15, there is a charge. This would be a fairly significant. Many people are probably not, they don't care if they have to put in 50 cents for 2 pages. Some are going to raise the questions that have already been raised to me. So we'd like you to look at it, think about it, kind of like Kelly's on some of his committees, and it'll be back. So that's information only.
Thanks, Mary.
And the last item is the request to submit an RFP for audit services. We agreed to do that last year, and the motion is to approve the proposed RFP and authorize distribution.
There's a motion by Mary,
Second.
second by Pritchett. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. End of report, Mary?
That's the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 8, which is unfinished business. A, budget meeting location conflict voice vote. It looks like we got a memo here, and it says potential conflict with budget workshop meeting date. And The city planner has indicated to be a planning commission meeting on August 19th, so the city council will want to discuss their many options, which includes moving the budget workshop to the conference room or moving the date of the third budget workshop meeting. So that'll be the discussion here. Anybody want to jump in, Mr. Green?
At this moment, no, I would defer to the council's needs.
Mary, you're running the, okay, and
You know, I'm one of those that's caught in a conflict because I'm on planning and zoning. But, you know, it is so hard to organize these meetings that I think we follow staff recommendation and move location of the workshop.
to the second floor
The second
conference
floor
room.
conference room, leave the date and the time the same.
Can it be televised? It can be, because I think we have the capability, but I think budget workshops should always be televised. And is there any problem with it, with doing that?
Jeff, I'll refer to you real quick before Mark.
In the conference room, it probably won't be live. We might have to tape it and then air it at a later date. But it can be taped.
Okay. Mark?
You have a choice of doing either one live.
Might be able to.
Either the planning commission and city council, you'd have to preempt the planning commission meeting, and we have public hearings scheduled that evening.
Pardon me?
The planning commission meeting is televised live.
Yes.
If you want to preempt the planning commission meeting and not televise that, you can televise live downstairs.
Okay.
One or the other.
Okay.
But I would hope
leave
that
the
you wouldn't
date the
preempt the
same.
planning commission
Right.
meeting and take that privilege away from them.
We leave the date the same, I would suggest, and then we'll work that out. I think we can do it either way. But if the planning commission really like being up here and it's terribly important, ours can be televised or broadcast later.
So you want to give us a motion here then to work with?
I'll move that we continue with our meeting date of August 19th, and that if necessary, we will meet in the conference.
Second. We have a motion by Mary, a second by Gabe. Any further discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. We'll go to 8B, call for applicants. Cable TV Advisory Committee, there's 2 terms to expire on 12/31/2016 and 12/31/2017. The Charter Commission, there's 2 terms to expire on 12/31/2018. HR, there's 1 term to expire on 6/6/2020. I did see an application coming in for that was brought to us. Rental Dwelling Board of Appeals, there's 1 tenant and 1 general public representative, terms to expire 12/31/2016. Walkable, Bikeable City Committee Ad Hoc, there's, looks like at least 1 more position, it doesn't say, but, and then we'll go to item number 9, Public Forum. This is time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the council. Time limits may be imposed. I would encourage just 1 at a time at the This is going once, twice, 3 times. Public forum is now closed. We'll go to item number 10, staff reports, written. Do you have anybody has any reports? We'll go to item number 11, council president, mayor, and council other committee reports. We'll start out with council other committees. Anybody have anything under council other committees? Then we'll start with the mayor. Mr. Mayor, you have any report?
I can bring for me. Hopefully, one of these days I will.
Oh, okay. One of the things I was just going to, and I brought up to Mark under council president report, as new businesses, and we know Zone Auto is going to open up, I was wondering if we can have, somebody kind of find out when those dates of opening are, and then have a ribbon cutting, a welcome from the mayor to the new businesses that are starting in town, and, try to find those dates. And I did talk to Mark about that, and I was wondering if that's a good direction. Because,
I think I heard that.
yes, and if we can just start going, and at least maybe Mark, he's got more control of the permits and what's kind of going on with everything, and he knows what date it opened. He could work with the mayor and let us know, and then it would be good for the business because they'll get some publicity through the paper and stuff, and it's also good for us to know. So, thank you so much for that. And then I guess the last thing I've got, Minnesota Power is hosting a get-together. And you want to
Oh, no, I just
mention
said
anything
that's
about
right.
the
Yeah.
get-together? But it's between 2 and 4 p.m. Wednesday, August 5th at Nisswa City Park. It's going to thank everybody that helped out during the storm and stuff like that. So if anybody wants to attend for that. And then last I had on my report was the fire department. There's an August 7th first meeting with the union. And what I was wondering on that, have we chosen, the committee or a council member that's going to be working with that? Or is that something that we need to do here as a council?
It was supposed to be the committee that worked with the negotiations in the past.
Okay, we have a
And
new
honestly-
city administrator, so you'll be part of that.
Yes, I will.
And can we mention who that committee is so that we just know on August 7th, I guess there's,
It would be Mr. Thoreen, Chris Schubert, and me. And
Okay.
then the fire department sends their own people. I'm not sure who they'll be. Do you know?
and then Chip, go ahead.
I'm just curious if it would make any sense to have our council liaison.
Depending on the time.
It's at
I'm
1
open to
o'clock
it,
on
yeah.
Friday.
Okay, and I would go with that. I'm, and thanks, Chip, for bringing that up. Do we need a motion for that?
I think that committee's already targeted. Need it.
No.
Was she, no, not, I don't, this would be a new committee.
Just to clarify, Mr. President, the
Yes.
targeting committee has been Mary and Chris and Patrick.
Yes.
And you're saying that as a liaison from that department? Is
Fire
that-
service.
So there'd be two new members, Sue and Jim.
And again, the only reason that I toss that out for consideration is because of the group that we are part of.
Yes. You want to make a motion, just get the ball rolling there?
I would move that we
Include that,
include
Sue and-
Sue in that.
Second.
we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you so much for that, and that's the end of my report. Item number 12, committee recommendations. Mr. Mayor, you want to go with that one?
Sure. Ann Fisher, for Walkable Bikeable City Committee, and put her on the ad hoc.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second by Mary. All in favor of the motion, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thanks, Ann. And then item number 13, adjourn to a closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D-03 to discuss IAFF negotiations update regarding restructuring of fire department.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in